George W. Campbell was blind from birth, congenital cataracts in both eyes, the doctor called it. George's father looked at the doctor in disbelief. "Isn't there anything you can do? Could surgery cure it?" "No," the doctor replied. "So far, we have not found a way to treat this condition." George could not see, but the love and faith of his parents made his life emotionally rich. As a child, George did not even realize he had a disability. When he was 6 years old, something unforgettable happened. That afternoon, he was playing happily with his friends. Forgetting that George was blind, Bill threw a ball toward him. The other boys shouted, "George, watch out, it's going to hit you." And it did. The ball didn't hurt George, but it confused him deeply. He asked his mother, "How did Bill know what was going to happen to me before I knew?" His mother sighed quietly. The moment she had feared had arrived. She had to tell her son the truth. "Sit down, George," she said softly, taking his hand. "I may not be able to explain it perfectly, and you may not understand all of it, but let me try." She gently held his small hand and began counting his fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These fingers are like the 5 senses. Holding each finger in turn, she continued. "This finger is for hearing. This one is for touch. This one is for smell. This one is for taste." She paused before continuing. "And the little finger is for sight. Each sense, like each finger, sends messages to the brain." Then she folded down the little finger, the one she called sight, into George's palm. "George," she explained, "you are a little different from other boys because you use only 4 senses. Instead of 5, hearing, touch, smell, and taste, but not sight. Now I want to show you something. Stand up." George stood. His mother picked up a ball. "Hold out your hands and catch it." George reached out. A moment later, he felt the ball touch his fingers. He caught it quickly and held it tightly. "Well done, my dear," his mother said. "I never want you to forget what you just did. You can catch a ball with 4 fingers instead of 5, George. And you can live a happy and complete life with 4 senses instead of 5. If you accept it and keep trying." George never forgot the symbol of 4 fingers instead of 5. To him, it became a symbol of hope. Whenever he felt discouraged because of his blindness, he thought of it. It became his source of strength, and he often repeated the words, 4 fingers instead of 5. Over time, he realized his mother was right. He could still live a full, happy life with 4 senses. But George Campbell's story did not end there. Once, George fell ill and had to be admitted to the hospital. During that time, his father brought him some good news. Modern science had found a way to treat congenital cataracts. Of course, the surgery could still fail, but the success rate was much higher than before. George longed to see light, so he decided to take the risk despite being warned of the possibility of failure, simply for the chance to see. Over the next 6 months, 4 operations were performed. Each of George's eyes underwent surgery twice. For many days, he had to lie in a dark hospital room with his eyes tightly bandaged. Finally, the day came when the bandages were removed. The doctor carefully unwrapped each layer. At first, George could only see blurry patches of light and darkness. Essentially, George Campbell was still blind. In that terrible moment, George lay still, lost in thought. Then he heard the doctor's footsteps approaching his bed. Something was placed over his eyes. "Well, can you see anything?" the doctor asked. George gently lifted his head from the pillow. The faint light he had seen moments before suddenly gained color, and then became a clear shape. "George," a voice called out. He recognized that voice immediately. It was his mother's voice. For the first time in 18 years, George Campbell saw his mother. Hers was the face of a 62-year-old woman with wrinkled skin, tired eyes, and bony hands. But to George, she was the most beautiful woman in the world. She was his angel. He saw all the years of hard work and patience, the years she spent teaching him, waiting for the day he would receive sight, and the love she had always given him. To this day, George has always treasured the first image he ever saw, the image of his mother. He also deeply values the sense of sight from that very first experience. He said, "No one can truly understand the mystery of sight unless they have been without it." We all need to learn how to see. George himself learned something valuable that can help anyone interested in understanding a positive attitude. He never forgot the day he saw his mother standing before him in the hospital room. He did not recognize her until he heard her voice. George said, "Our minds interpret what we see. Science has proven this." Dr. Samuel Renshaw described the process of seeing as follows. Most of the act of seeing does not happen in the eyes alone. The eyes work like hands reaching out, grasping meaningless things and carrying them to the brain. Then the brain sends these things to memory. Only when the brain interprets the data do we actually see the object before us. Some people see very little of the strength and happiness around them because they do not properly process the information their eyes bring to the brain. As a result, they merely look at things without truly seeing them. Sometimes we perceive events without understanding what they mean for us. In other words, we do not know how to apply a positive attitude when receiving and processing the information sent to the brain. Perhaps it is time to examine your mental vision. This is not ordinary eyesight or something within the specialty of eye doctors. But like physical vision, mental vision can also be impaired. When mental vision is defective, you will find yourself groping through misconceptions, stumbling, and unnecessarily hurting both yourself and others. Human eyesight can suffer from nearsightedness or farsightedness. These are also two conditions that mental vision can experience. People with a short-sighted outlook cannot see distant goals or potential. They focus only on the problems directly in front of them and remain unaware of the opportunities ahead, opportunities that could become theirs if they simply took time to think and plan. You, too, may be considered short-sighted if you do not make plans, set goals, and build a foundation for your future. On the other hand, people who look too far ahead may fail to see the potential right before them. They do not recognize the opportunities already available. They see only an idealized future world that has little connection to the present. They want to begin at the top instead of working their way there step by step. Moreover, they do not realize that trying to start at the top only puts them in a difficult position. They observe and recognize what they see. Therefore, as you learn to view life more clearly, you need to develop your power of observation. In the past, the people of the small town of Darby, Montana, often looked up at a distant mountain they called Crystal Mountain. It received that name because erosion had exposed a ridge of crystal bearing, or that sparkled like glass. A stone road had been built through the deposit in early 1937, yet until 1951, 14 years later, almost no one bothered to bend down, pick up one of those glittering pieces, and examine it closely. Then in 1951, two men from Darby, A. Cumley and L.I. Thompson, saw a mineral collection displayed in town. Both were fascinated. In that collection, they noticed samples of beryl which, according to the note attached, had been used in nuclear energy research. Thompson and Cumley immediately thought of Crystal Mountain. Thompson sent a sample over to the Bureau of Mines in Spokane, along with a request that an analyst come and inspect what he described as a very large quantity of the mineral. That same year, the Bureau of Mines sent a bulldozer up Crystal Mountain and collected samples for study. Their purpose was to determine whether it was the largest and most valuable beryl deposit in the world. Today, trucks line up one after another, climbing the mountain and returning with loads of ore. Meanwhile, at the foot of the mountain, representatives of the U.S. Steel Company and the U.S. government wait eagerly, with money in hand to purchase the valuable ore. All of that began on one special morning, when those two men not only observed with their eyes, but also used their minds to observe, discovering value that others failed to see. Today, they are wealthy men with fortunes worth millions of dollars. A person who looks too far ahead might not have done what Thompson and Cumley did if his mental vision were impaired. He would only be able to see value in the distance while wasting the opportunities right in front of him. Could a great fortune be lying just outside your own door? Take a look at yourself. When carrying out your everyday work, do you ever feel irritated by some small inconvenience? Perhaps you may come up with a solution to overcome that. Frustration a solution that could help both yourself and others. Many people have become wealthy simply by meeting ordinary, everyday needs. The inventors of the hairpin, paperclip, and metal zipper are examples of this. Look at yourself. Learn to truly see the things around you. You may find a diamond mine right in your own backyard. However, being short-sighted creates just as many problems as seeing too far. Short-sighted people can only see what is directly before them and overlook all distant possibilities. They never understand the value of planning, nor do they understand the importance of taking time to think. They are too busy dealing with immediate problems, so busy that they no longer have time to look ahead, search for opportunities, observe trends, or see the bigger picture. The ability to look into the future is one of the remarkable achievements of the human mind. In Florida's citrus-growing region, there is a small town called Winter Haven. Many people would say it could never be a suitable place to attract tourists. This winter paradise lies in the middle of a vast, quiet area. There is no ocean, no mountains, only miles of rolling hills, a few small lakes, and scattered cypress trees rising from swamps below the valleys. Yet one man saw those swamps with a kind of vision others did not use. His name was Richard Pope. Pope bought a large swamp, fenced it off, and later refused offers of more than $1 million to buy what became the world-famous cypress gardens. Of course, things were not that simple. Throughout the process, Pope had to see opportunities within his specific circumstances. Take advertising, for example. Pope knew the only way to attract tourists to such a remote place was through advertising, but advertising would cost a great deal of money, so he chose another way. He went into the photography business. He opened a photo shop at Cypress Gardens, sold film to visitors, and then taught them how to take photographs inside the gardens. He hired water ski performers to do difficult tricks and showed visitors how to adjust their cameras to capture the action. Naturally, when the tourists returned home, the most beautiful photographs from their trip had been taken at Cypress Gardens. They helped Pope advertise through the most effective method of all, word of mouth, and the photographs themselves were proof. This is exactly the kind of creative vision we need to develop. We must learn to look at the world through different eyes so that we can recognize the opportunities hidden around us while also searching for opportunities that lie ahead in the future. Seeing life clearly is a skill that must be learned, and like any other skill, it requires practice before we can become truly proficient. Seeing the abilities, potential, and perspectives of others, we may understand our own abilities well, yet be completely unaware of the abilities of others. Everyone, whether great or ordinary, begins from the same starting point. No one is born a genius. In fact, some remarkable people were at times considered foolish. Only when a person adopts a positive attitude, learns to understand his abilities, and sets clear goals for the future does he begin to reach the heights of success. There was once a boy whom his teachers always regarded as dull-witted, slow, and unintelligent. He often sat quietly drawing something on his slate. He liked to observe and listen to the people around him. He asked questions that no one could answer, yet rarely spoke about what he himself knew. Other children called him stupid, and he was often punished by being made to stand in the corner of the classroom. That boy was Thomas Alva Edison, who would later become one of the world's greatest inventors. You would probably find the full story of Edison's life fascinating. His teachers and classmates thought he was foolish, yet one event caused him to turn from a negative mindset to a positive one, and he went on to become an extraordinary figure and a great inventor. What was that turning point? What happened to Edison that changed his attitude toward life? One day he told his mother that his teacher had said to an inspector that he was very slow and there was no reason for him to remain in school. His mother replied that even if that were true, she still believed her son was intelligent and would achieve great things one day. From that day on, Edison changed completely. He later said, "I was greatly influenced by my mother. The positive influence of her early teaching never left me. My mother was always kind, understanding, and she never misjudged me." His mother's faith caused him to see himself with entirely different eyes. That belief turned his negative outlook into a positive one and led him to choose a positive attitude toward learning and research. That attitude taught Edison to view things more broadly and more deeply, enabling him to create inventions that brought tremendous benefit to humanity. Perhaps his teacher failed to see that potential because he was not truly concerned with helping the young boy, but Edison's mother did. You tend to see only what you want to see. When you hear something, it does not necessarily mean you are paying attention, but when you listen, you are focusing your entire mind. Through this book, we want you to truly listen to this message. Look at how you relate to and apply the principles of success in your own life. Let us consider the following example. Roy Plunkett, a chemist at DuPont, conducted a special experiment and it failed. When he opened the test tube, it appeared to be empty. He was puzzled and asked himself why. He did not throw the test tube away as many scientists might have done in a similar situation. Instead, he placed it on a scale. Strangely enough, the test tube weighed significantly more after the experiment than unused test tubes. Once again, Dr. Plunkett asked himself why. In searching for the answer, he discovered a transparent plastic called tetrafluoroethylene, better known as Teflon, which would later be widely used in industry and everyday life. So whenever there is something you do not understand, ask yourself why. Observe it, analyze it, and you may achieve something remarkable. Ask questions. Ask yourself and others about the things you do not fully understand. It may prove valuable later on. Many great scientific discoveries began with simple questions like these. Once, a young Englishman was lying under an apple tree on his grandmother's farm, relaxing and daydreaming. Suddenly, an apple fell to the ground beside him. Being a student of advanced mathematics, he began to wonder, why did the apple fall to the ground? He asked himself, did the earth pull the apple down? Or did the apple pull the earth? Or do both the apple and the earth attract each other? Is there some law at work here? Isaac Newton used the power of thought and made a great discovery. Thus, the law of universal gravitation was born. Mental observation is thinking. Newton found the answer. The earth and the apple attract one another, and the law of gravitation applies throughout the entire universe. Isaac Newton discovered gravity because he was observant and always searched for answers to what he saw. Another man, by developing the power of observation and acting on what he learned, also found happiness and became wealthy. Newton asked questions. This man sought the advice of an expert. The man who became rich by accepting advice was Kokichi Mikimoto. In Toba in 1869, when he was only 11 years old, Mikimoto took over his father's noodle-making business. His father had become seriously ill and could no longer work. Mikimoto worked to support his 6 brothers, 3 sisters, and both of his parents. In addition to making noodles every day, he also had to sell them. He proved himself to be an excellent salesman. Earlier in life, Mikimoto had been taught by a samurai that true faith is shown through kindness and love for others, not merely through prayer. With a positive attitude, a simple philosophy, and positive action, Mikimoto became a man of action. He trained himself to turn ideas into practical action. At the age of 20, he fell in love with the daughter of a samurai. He knew that his future father-in-law would never approve of his daughter marrying a noodle maker, so he decided to change careers and become a pearl merchant. Like many successful people, Mikimoto continually sought knowledge that could help him in his new work. He went to Professor Yoshikichi Mizukuri to learn about a natural phenomenon that had never before been fully proven. The professor explained, pearls are formed inside oysters when a foreign object such as a grain of sand enters and becomes trapped. If the oyster does not die from it, layers of nacre are secreted around the object. Over many years, this process creates a pearl. Mikimoto was fascinated. He asked himself, could I cultivate pearls by carefully placing a foreign object inside an oyster, and then letting nature do the rest? He turned theory into positive action as soon as he learned to observe the process. Through the professor, Mikimoto learned a new way of seeing. Then he used the power of imagination. He also took time to think creatively. He reasoned that if a pearl forms when a foreign object enters an oyster naturally, then he could also create pearls by deliberately placing foreign objects into oysters and causing them to produce pearls. He learned to observe and act according to the laws of nature, and as a result became one of the most successful people in the world of pearl cultivation and the pearl trade. When studying the life of Kokichi Mikimoto, we found that he applied all 17 principles of success. However, knowledge alone cannot make you successful if you do not take action. Put knowledge into action. Here is another story about pearls. This time it is about an American jewelry businessman from Iowa named Joseph Goldstone. One day, he heard that the Japanese had developed beautiful cultured pearls. The pearls were of very high quality and sold for much less than natural pearls. Joe saw a great opportunity in this. Even though it was during the worst period of the Great Depression, he and his wife Esther decided to sell everything they owned and travel to Tokyo. They arrived in Japan with less than $1,000 in their pockets, but they carried with them a big plan and a great deal of positive attitude. They requested a meeting with Kei Kitamura, president of the Japan Pearl Merchants Association. Joe explained his plan to bring Japanese pearls into the American market and persuaded Kitamura to allow him to buy on credit, with an initial line of credit of $100,000. It was an enormous sum, especially during the Depression, yet after only a few days, Kitamura agreed. The pearls sold extremely well, and the Goldstone family became increasingly wealthy. Only a few years later, they decided to establish their own pearl culturing farm. With the help of Chairman Kitamura, once again, they had seen an opportunity where others had not. When they discovered that more than 50% of the oysters died after the pearl nucleus was implanted, they asked themselves, how can we reduce this extremely high loss rate? After extensive research, the Goldstone family began applying sterilization techniques borrowed from medicine. Oyster shells were scraped and cleaned thoroughly to reduce the risk of infection. The surgeon used a liquid anesthetic to relax the oysters, then inserted a small piece of shell inside each one. The incision was made with a sterilized surgical knife. Immediately afterward, each oyster was placed into a cage, and the cage was lowered into the water. Every 4 months, the cage was lifted and the oysters were carefully examined. With this technique, 90% of the oysters survived and produced pearls. From that point on, the Goldstone family prospered. By now, we can clearly see how successful people become successful after learning to use mental perception. The ability to see is not merely the process of receiving light through the retina of the eye. It is also the skill of interpreting what we see and applying that interpretation to our lives. Learning how to seek and open opportunities you may never have imagined. Yet beyond learning how to use mental perception, there is still more required for success with a positive attitude. You must also learn how to act on what you have learned. You must also learn how to act on what you have learned. Action always plays a vital role, because it is through action that you achieve your goals. Do not wait any longer. Read the next chapter, The Secret of Accomplishing Goals, and with a positive attitude, continue climbing the steps of success.